And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
World champion. Tommy never, he liked wrestling in the Atlanta area, down south. He liked it there, period. Did not want the schedule. He said so. Barry Windham. Barry Windham is the greatest all-around everything ever. I mean, my God, he's Barry Windham. He didn't want it either. He's told us this, so it goes both ways. Sometimes Vince just didn't want to put them over, or they didn't want to be here. One or the other, I mean,
you talk about travel schedules. I don't know if you ever read Bobby Heenan's book, but when Hogan and Orndorff had their run, they were wrestling 3 times in one day on the weekend. They would start off Vince got a private jet. It'd be Orndorff and Hogan in the main event on the East Coast. They'd fly to Chicago, be the main event there, hop on the plane again. It's fully dressed too, by the way. They never got undressed. And then end up on the West Coast somewhere for the main event there. They did this for months. That is a hell of a travel schedule. Wrestling 3 times a night on Saturday and Sunday and flying around. Would you get burnt out? Hell yeah, I would. I mean, that is just insanity. But Vince was grabbing that money. He loved it. They were hot. And Bobby Heenan's got great stories like that in his book. He was a great man, but he was with them. He goes, we were burnt out every weekend. And then we had to do the indie shows during the week, back then it was the gymnasiums and all that stuff. And Paul Orndorff, you talk about the forgotten guy almost in WrestleMania. The same goes for Superfly Jimmy Snuka. He was there for what? I mean, he barely did anything. He was a big name. His name, he was like, he came out with them and all that stuff to even the odds. But, he was forgotten about at that time too. I mean, Paul Orndorff probably got more popular after WrestleMania. He had a run with Piper.
Yeah, but Joe, I think Snuka was forgotten by design. I think Vince knew that he was trouble, and it was time to get him out of there.
I got some stories I can tell you. The main point personally about Jimmy Snuka and all that stuff, and affected my life. I can tell you stories off the air about that, but Jimmy Snuka had some serious fucked up demons, and he was my idol. He was my idol growing up. I met him. But he's got some fucking demons, man, that he'd be put away in jail for now.
Yeah, but I know
this firsthand. I don't want to talk about it on the air. I might, as I, it almost put me in therapy. Let's put it that way. So Jimmy.
Yeah. Now you got me intrigued. You can't put that carrot out there and not tell at least one of the stories.
He loved cocaine. That's for sure. He would
carry, we know that.
He would carry. He never flew. He had to drive because he knew he'd get busted at the airport. So he always flew. He he
always had cocaine. What do you want him to do? Go on a plane?
All right. So
he's not going on a plane with the cocaine.
Okay, we're gonna do this. I'll tell you my story.
Do it.
Okay?
All right. We got the story, Jimmy. We forced it out of him. Let's go,
Joe. Come on, Joe. Give it.
Okay, so the story goes, I went to high school, pre-Missy Beefcake days. I went to high school in the 9th grade. I met a girl. I won't say her name, but I met a girl.
All right.
Her sisters used to like to go to the wrestling matches and hang out with the wrestlers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So my idol was Jimmy Snuka. I wanted to be Jimmy Snuka. That was my thing. I was 14, 15 years old. I idolized the guy. I had a scrapbook. I was. So,
all right, Joe, hold on one second. I need you to hold on. I'm just painting the picture. You meet this girl. You're attracted to her. You're like, hey, I'm going to bring you to a wrestling match. I'm going to let you meet Jimmy Snuka. I'm excited to see him. I see where this is going. Let's go. Go ahead.
So one night we go to the matches. We're hanging out in the lobby and all that stuff. And then next, we're going to a restaurant because they always ate. Next to the Garden was a hotel called the Hotel 57. It was almost like connected to the Garden. And they had a restaurant there. It was like a fancy restaurant, but they would go there. Snuka, a young Brutus Beefcake was there.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sitting at the table. I'm with Jimmy Snuka. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, I'm 40 and, I'm just like godsmacked. I was like, wow, okay.
Joe,
Yeah.
I got to stop you real quick. By any chance did he look at you and go, "What a day, brother"?
No, what a day. It wasn't what a day back then. I was
Come
never
on.
saying what a day, but he didn't catch on to it. He was very reclusive. He was very antisocial. He wasn't a social guy. He didn't like crowds. So
Right.
I met him,
Right.
shook his hand. He, thank you for being a fan, brother. All that good stuff. And I met my idol. I was like, holy shit. Well,
Nice.
what I didn't realize is the girl that I was attracted to, they were together.
Oh.
Once a month, they would hook up. She was 14.
Now, wait a minute.
She was 14.
What?
They hooked up at that moment was the first time?
No, they've been together for a couple of years.
Whoa, Mike, stop. She was how old, Joe? How old was she?
Once I got to know her we were 15. She would show me pictures that Snuka would come to her house. She lived in Dorchester, Mass, which is a suburb of Boston. And she showed me pictures of him in the dining room. She was like 13 years old. She didn't look her age. Okay, so let me just.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
So basically, I was the boyfriend for 3 weeks out of the 4 weeks because Snuka would come to town and they'd be together. But we used to travel together. So another story was I was down in Providence, Rhode Island. We went down there. At this point, I'm using her to meet the wrestlers. I'm not really attracted to her anymore. I was just like, I know what you're doing. It's fucked up. All that shit. Drugs.
First of all, Joe, it's also probably a good idea too, because if she sleep with Jimmy Snuka, it's hard to match up with that, right?
Yeah,
so
he's like 30-something years old, and
it is.
So
the hell are you talking about? Anyway, go ahead.
So we go to Providence. She's waiting for him. I'm talking with Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He was in his Chippendales. He was the dancer phase, that kind of guy with Jimmy Valiant and all that stuff. I met Cyndi Lauper. I met Gorilla Monsoon. The Tongan kid at that time was around, and he was a pain in the ass in the locker room. He was always getting in fights. Gorilla Monsoon would kick him out, and Gorilla would look at me and be like, fucking kids, because he was like 17, 18 years old when he wrestled. And in comes Jimmy Snuka with his wife. And his wife showed up, and they went in together, and he totally ignored the girl.
Right.
I don't want to say her name, but
no, it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
She was absolutely devastated. And I'm like, I told you, I fucking told you so. This guy, we found out later on that he had a girl in every town, young girls. He liked the young girls. What's the girl's name that he killed there?
Nancy
Argentina.
I always say Martino. We heard that story back then, but I was a kid. I'm like, I don't know if he really did that or not, but I could tell he missed a lot of shows, by the way.
Joe, real quick, how old were you when you were dating her? Can I ask that? Is that okay?
Yeah, it was 15, 14.
Okay, 15. You were 15 and she was 13 when you guys began. How long were you together with her, real quick?
I've known her. I knew her personally all through high school. I went in the Navy. I met her in the Navy. She flew out and met me in the Navy a couple of times, and I met her afterwards and all that stuff. But I haven't seen her, talk to her. I mean, I think I touched base with her like 6-7 years ago. She's
Joe. Joe, I gotta ask you though. Wait a minute though. How difficult was it? You said at one point you were using her to meet the wrestlers. How do you deal with all of that? I would have been like, you tramp, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it was a mental thing for me. I was meeting my idol.
You're telling me Killer Khan? I mean, what's going on here? Are you serious?
Wait a minute. Hold on, Jimmy. You heard Joe's story. You heard Joe's story, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
It was a sad, depressing story. I'm going to tell you my story. Tell me which one's worse. All right.
It was a pretty wild
You remember
story.
Janice from high school? Let's not use her last name, Janet S. Do you remember Janet S?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So me and Janet S had a relationship, and it was summer of '85. I don't know. I'm making it up. But I forget.
Yeah, what are those summers back?
And she worked at a bagel place, and one day I went to pick her up on my bicycle.
Nice.
And she comes out and she goes, I have to break up with you. And I was head over heels for her because Ralph Macchio had come into the bagel shop and asked her on a date.
Oh God.
So which one is worse? Joe losing his girlfriend to Jimmy Snuka, or me losing my girlfriend to Ralph Macchio, the Karate
I
Kid?
didn't totally lose her because after the wife showed up in Providence, they never saw each other again. So that was
and Joe got to meet Abdullah the Butcher and Stan Hansen. So
Yeah, I didn't meet anybody.
You know what, Joe?
I met Jimmy Farrow. I met Jimmy Farrow. That's who I met after that. So how fair is life?
But
Well,
you gotta,
wait a minute.
you gotta understand, I'm 14, 15 years old. My parents were like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, they were like, you're hanging out with these guys that are 30, 40 years old, and all for what? And I go, I want to meet them. I see these guys on TV. I'm a fan. I want, you know how it is. No, I wasn't a groupie per se,
Joe,
but I love talking to them. You know, it pisses me off. I lost a lot of pictures back in the day with my parents' house. I got pictures of me and Brutus. He's always posing, doing stuff like that backstage. Me and Gorilla Monsoon. I mean,
Joe, can I just say something though? To be honest,
go ahead.
I was expecting like a Dark Side of the Ring type of story.
It is a dark side. I'm giving you the.
Here's the deal, though. Here's the deal, though. Time out. We're gonna play really quickly because Mike asked me which one is worse. So we're gonna play Dirty. All right.
Okay.
And since I'm the referee, I've heard both stories. This is what I think. Unfortunately, Mike, your story is worse, and I'll tell you why for a bunch of different reasons. Number one,
please,
Joe. I don't having a good time, one way or the other. So he's having a good time. And he gets to go to wrestling matches and meet famous wrestlers. And at the end of the day, they even talked and hung out from time to time after the fucking Navy. You go into a bagel place and find out that Ralph Macchio has just the last American virgin to you.
Yes, thank you.
You're done? You probably didn't even get a free fucking bagel. Let's be honest about this.
All right?
Not even an egg sandwich.
So unfortunately, our winner this week.
All right, Joe, I got to put Jimmy. I got to put Joe on the spot. I got to put Joe on the spot, though. Okay. You're 15, Joe. So I'm imagining sex is just beginning for you, right? Your hormones.
Hold on, really quick.
Right?
My girl Joe Myers put a nice little quote in there, and it's true. So if you read that quote, Joe Myers, that's my baby cakes.
No, I know who that is. You want me to go to YouTube?
She put a comment. She put a comment in there, and it's true. To this day, it's true.
Okay.
So
I'm
being honest here. So
yeah, it's fine, but I haven't read it yet. I can't see it.
Okay.
I don't know where it is.
It's right there, right after Phil's.
Let's see what we got.
I'm looking. Joe, where are you, Joe Myers?
Joe Myers, right there, right above Phil DeCesare.
Wait a minute.
Wow, you know something, Mike. I guess I gotta ask you this then too, as the Dirty goes to an extended few minutes. You didn't need therapy for Macchio, did you?
I did. That was a depressing time for me.
Wow.
That was depressing. To lose your girl to Ralph Macchio is the love. Bro. I think that's when I started lifting weights, Jimmy. I was mad. That's what I think. I would think it was smart, Jimmy.
Mike, back in the day, I was in the band scene, and I had a really, really good, successful band on Long Island, right? And I made a lot of musician friends. I'll never forget, man. One day, my friend Brian from a really great band, he came to me, and he goes, "You'll never believe what happened." And I'm like, "What happened?" And he goes, "My girlfriend just fucking ran off with Lane Staley from Alice in Chains.
Oh.
He banged her. He banged her in an area we won't get into, and then just dumped her." And I'm like looking at him. I'm like, "Oh my God, this guy's gonna need therapy."
That's how Mike, what were you gonna ask me? You're gonna ask me something.
No, and I'm really being serious. This isn't a joke.
Okay.
Here you are, a young man. You're attracted to this girl. You find out she's sleeping with Jimmy Snuka. You got to know in your mind, like, that thing's got to be like 80 feet long in between his legs. And, like, are you just like, yeah,
That's a serious question?
This is serious. Like,
Joe,
you got to
be serious
out.
with you.
No, you got to check out. You got to say, I'm done. I'm not doing this because I'll never make the grade.
Oh my God. I wouldn't even
I'm being serious, Jimmy.
That would not even occur to me. Oh my God!
I'm 15 years old, and I'm living a dual it's almost like, I don't want to, what's the word? Split personality disorder.
Right.
I go there. I go from being her boyfriend that night to just somebody hanging out with the wrestlers. Well,
Which was fine. Like you using her to read wrestlers is cool. I get that.
Right. At first, I really liked her, and at first, it really hurt. But meeting the wrestlers and meeting Snuka and all that stuff, that kind of took the pain away.
Wow.
So as everything, no, this is strange. I know it is.
I'm sorry. It's
Joe.
You
didn't want to, Joe. You didn't want to smack Snuka in the face. I would have slapped him in his fucking mug when he walked in with this. I don't give a shit.
Not that guy.
Not
that guy.
All I kept saying was there was an angry time. I was angry a couple of times.
Yeah, like to the point where,
the point I was angry at certain times where I just, I did have to check out, but I was like, no, I want to meet the wrestlers. I want to hang out with the wrestlers. So.
That's fucked up, dude.
But here's the fucked up thing. After it all ended, I was not in love with her anymore, but she was in love with me. You know what I mean?
Good.
So it was
good.
Like,
Yeah.
And then I'll be honest with you, we had it out in her kitchen, and I was like, what you did is what you've been doing for years is fucked up. And my sisters and my brothers were like, what the fuck? Like, this guy should be in jail. He's fucking 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds.
Right.
And he's like 30 or 40 years old. This is the first time I'm talking about this. So leave it to Monty and the Farrah show to talk about this. And
sorry about it,
baby.
Sorry about that.
You think Lee Cole's talking about Jimmy Snuka doing 13-year-olds?
No.
Right?
I don't think so.
I mean,
I don't know.
This is yeah. You know what? This is why Jimmy Snuka wasn't a good guy, and this is why a company couldn't put the rap company name around.
The drugs, man. I've never seen cocaine, that amount of cocaine. He had a suitcase full of this shit wherever he went.
Right.
And one day I got to carry that suitcase. He says, "Don't lose it." Well, I had to watch the suitcase one night, and
wait a minute. Wait.
I looked in it, and it was full of fucking cocaine. Like,
we have a 15-year-old, if I can, Joe, without insult. We have a 15-year-old, early '80s Mark watching the cocaine for Jimmy Superfly Snuka. I just want to make sure we got all of that right. Here's the best part. Joe, get ready. Joe, get ready for the hate mail. It's going to come. Okay, it's all your fault that you're telling these truthful stories about a wrestling legend. How dare you? Get ready.
Wait a minute, Joe. Even to go further, I think you just said you also partaked in the cocaine at 15 years old.
I didn't say that.
Of course, I did.
Yes, he did.
You did?
I partied. Joe. I partied with these guys. These guys were partying.
Oh my God!
So think about that. That they influenced a 15-year-old kid to do coke.
I was very mature for my age. Here I am, 15 in high school. Everyone's playing sports and basketball, and I'm hanging out with wrestlers once a month. You know what I mean?
Joe,
that's what I did. My high school years were like that. What's that?
Did that cocaine habits, was that hard to kick over the years or what?
No, I just did it recreational. It was fine. I mean,
oh wow! Consider yourself very fortunate,
Jimmy. Listen, he's a 15-year-old kid around his idols. Thank God they didn't throw pills at him. You know what I mean? It's like, where's the morality? Where's the morality? Does Vince McMahon get the blame for that? Does Vince McMahon get the blame for that?
Is that Vince's fault? I mean,
that's not Vince's fault, because back then you were legitimately an independent contractor. You were paid at every arena you went to, and that's what Snuka was big on. That Gorilla Monsoon had wads of cash on him. I do believe, I'll remember one night, the Tonga kid, it was Tonga and Piper versus Snuka and somebody else. Oh, Snuka and Tonga versus Piper and Orton. They had that feud going on. We were in Providence. No, we were in Boston Garden, and Gorilla asked Tonga kid to blade himself. And he was like 17, 18 years old too. He was a young kid when he got involved with wrestling, and he bladed himself so much that he couldn't stop bleeding. Gorilla's like, what the fuck? I didn't want all that kind of blood. He was bleeding everywhere. It was bad. So they wrapped his head up, and we go out to dinner afterwards at the Hotel 57 restaurant. And here's the Tonga kid in his full wrestling gear, the Samoan shirt and the wraparound skirt and all that stuff, and he's walking the streets of Boston like, "Hey, look at me! I'm a wrestler." And then I remember, I think it was Piper who was like, "What's up with that kid?" And he looked at me, and Piper looked at me and said, "Why don't you go talk to that kid and calm him down?" And I went out there and I said, "Look, bro, you gotta chill out. I mean, you can't be walking the streets with a bloody forehead in character mode too." By the way, he was very hyper as
Joe,
a kid.
let me ask you a question. When they came to town,
Yeah.
you went with who? Who gave you the call? The girl? She says, "Hey, they're in town. Let's go."
Oh no,
Is that how it worked?
I was a wrestling fan. Phil DeCesare could tell you they came the first Saturday of every month at the Boston Garden.
So you just went there and they knew who you were and said, "Okay, let's go to dinner."
Me and her and her. Don't forget her sisters were involved in this too. Her older sisters. So we would drive to the garden, go in the garden. We didn't even have tickets. We had a side entrance. We'd go in the back entrance. The security guards knew who they were. They knew who all those girls were with the wrestlers. And next, we're backstage. We were never in the locker rooms. We were always right outside the locker rooms where they would, wait to go get in the ring and all this stuff and go down the aisle and everything. So
when you went to dinner, did they pay for dinner for you? You had to pay your own.
Yeah, they paid. They had back then it was all cash with them. Snuka had wads of cash. Orndorff, Piper, Orton, wads of cash. Back then it was a cash. I think it was a cash company.
Right.
You got paid when you showed up. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Tony Gurria or somebody. He was involved with helping paying the guys too. He had the suitcase, he had the money, and that's how they got their money back then. It wasn't like you got a check and a W-2 and all that stuff. You got cash. So we're talking 85, 86. Hogan, I've met him once. He was looking for somebody. Hogan never was around these guys. He didn't participate in this stuff.
Good.
This was post WrestleMania. This was after the first WrestleMania and stuff. I mean, it was going crazy. But I was shocked one night. He was at a bar. Nobody was around him. Like, you see Hogan. You're like, oh, shit, that's Hulk Hogan. And he was alone. And, I went up to him and was like, hey, what's up? And he's like, oh, how you doing? And that was it. Just a meet and greet, real 30 seconds. I left him alone. Went back to hang out. The Samoans were there. Afa and Sika were there. And, they were just hanging out. It was like they owned the place, but they didn't. People would still come in and all that stuff. But it was always that place they would go.